I'm getting a feeling that there's a couple of things that I think we're going to see more of. I know our team is seeing a little bit more of the estate sale side of things right now. We've dealt with a number of estate sales over the last probably 3 to 4 months, specifically on our team. But I think there's going to be more upcoming estate sales. A lot of people, COVID is very hard on people, especially the elderly. And we're finding that the death rates, unrelated to COVID, but more related to, I guess, the isolation thing. A lot of people are not taking care of themselves, and their health is failing faster than it ever was. So I think we're going to get into a lot of estate sales coming up over the next little while. I know that we are preparing for another one right now. One of our teammates, Anita Chaput, she's got one on the line right now that she's dealing with. I think Tammy Gannon, you're online here. So yeah, Tammy, I see Tammy's name here. She's in the throes of selling an estate right now in the Mount Uniacke area. I sold 2 late last year. So that's one of the things that we're going to see an increase in. And the other thing I think right now, job loss is creating a lot of issues for people. And I know the banks have not traditionally moved forward with legal action just because they realize we're in a global pandemic. However, there are people that have already walked away from their homes. I've spotted them. They're vacant. You might see them as well out there. They've got tags in their windows, and the driveways sometimes are not shoveled and cleared. Sometimes you see a red tag on the power meter, which is an indication that the house has been abandoned or has been secured and is now being managed by the management company for the bank. So, and I think I've been told by a number of sources that bank foreclosures are going to be on the rise as soon as they decide it's appropriate to start taking people's houses back. I think right now it might be still a little bit taboo for the banks to foreclose and force somebody out of their house during this period of time. So they're probably being more diplomatic and saving public relation. But I think that's something that's going to be a reality over the next probably 8 to 12 months. You might start seeing more foreclosures come to market. So, all right, so I guess we'll get started. Basically, I'll just give you a little bit of my background. I started to do foreclosure work for household finance back, I would think, in 2002. And I have sold probably 60 to 75 foreclosures for them in that period of time. I've done business with a lot of different banks as well. I've handled RBC foreclosure work. I've handled CIBC foreclosure work, Street Capital, Exceed Mortgaging, Toronto Dominion Bank. I've had listings and I've sold all of the other banks as well in my career. So nothing is uniform, I will say that. So if you say, is it normal for this process? It's normal for that finance company for that process, but not all finance companies work the same way. So you have to know that. There literally is very few things that I have not seen in foreclosures in my career. And it's through foreclosures that I truly believe everything sells. No matter what it is, it will sell. So long as it's got the right price on it, it's going to sell. I had a house in South Rawdon. It was the Flanagan house. It was just add-on after add-on after add-on. And it was somebody that didn't know what they were doing. But what they started with was a 1960s mobile home. And they just kept adding and adding and adding. And I thought, there's no way I'm ever going to sell this. And if I sell it, they're just going to tear this thing down and remove everything from the property and start again. But not the case. They bought it and they fixed it up to move in. Crazy. So, so I guess I just would rather open it up to you guys to ask some questions because, you know, I don't know. Everybody's got a certain level of experience when it comes to real estate. There's some new agents into the industry now. that have zero experience in foreclosure work. Some have kind of a little foreclosure work, and some probably have advanced knowledge of foreclosure questions. And I think the conversation will evolve from there. Can be a short,
I've got a couple of questions.
Okay, sure, Phil.
Yeah, so Chad, I guess the two, and maybe you'll get takeaways I would like today would be, one, what do we do to put ourselves in a situation where we can get them as listings? And two, how do we know when they're coming so we can, and where do we access that information so we can be there to bid on them for either ourselves or have our clients there to bid on them as well? Case in point, there's a house on our street, and I know that they just packed up and left about 2 months ago. And I know it's coming as a foreclosure. I would love to either list it, but I'd also like an opportunity to even potentially buy it. But I have no idea where to start on either of those, to do either of those things.
Yeah, awesome question, Phil. Now, I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi feed, because I'm at the back of the Keller Williams office right now. So if I don't pick or choose the back network, sometimes the signal strength is not good. So was Phil breaking up for everybody or for just me?
Just you.
Just me. Okay. So if
your fault.
Okay, obviously it is. So
Fix it.
if I'm choppy and breaking up here, let me know, and I'll look to switch. I have full strength on my Wi-Fi over here, but so Phil,
You guys need a booster in that building, apparently.
we do. Unfortunately, sometimes our computers just pick up the front network, and then we have a weak signal. But I can also switch to the back network, which is a lot stronger.
You should
Just
probably
so you know.
switch, Chad.
So, sorry,
You should probably switch. It's still pretty choppy.
right now?
Yep.
Okay.
We might lose them. I wonder if we'll lose them.
Those are great questions, Phil, because I was wondering the very same thing.
Yeah, those
Okay.
were mine too.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Perfect. Great.
So yes, I have switched to the back office Wi-Fi, so hopefully it won't be an issue anymore. Okay, so Phil, your first question, how do you know when the foreclosures are coming up? Or where do you get information about foreclosures? Was that your first question?
Yeah. How do I position myself in a place to get it as a listing, or B, position my clients in a place to buy it when it is about to be a listing?
Right. Okay. So first question, with respect to the listings, you have to have a good relationship with the lender that has the foreclosure. It would be rare for you as a stranger to call up and say, hey, I notice you have a house on this street and I believe it's going to foreclosure. If you haven't already got a real estate agent to represent you in the listing, I'd really like to talk to you about taking on that listing. I'm a local expert, yada, yada. However, the issue is if you don't commonly do business, and let's say Royal Bank comes often to the Keller Williams office and does their presentations. And so do the people at Premier Mortgage. The thing is, the banks at this point oftentimes have those relationships with agents already who refer them a lot of mortgage business. Okay, so if they have people that are already supporting their business, they are going to support them back. It's a preferred partnership. Okay, so it's very difficult. If you do, Phil, if you do a lot or send a lot of mortgages to a specific bank and you have a really good relationship, so I would reach out to that particular lending institution and say, hey, listen, I've sent you a great deal of business there. I'd be open to doing some of your foreclosure work, right? So whenever you have foreclosures, I'd really like to for you to keep me in mind, and I'd appreciate the referral and the listing of those foreclosures when they come up. Okay. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get an established relationship with a bank. Now, my portfolio allows me to call just about any bank and talk to them about my extensive experience in foreclosure work, which may give me an advantage over somebody who's just a stranger doing the same thing, saying, "Oh, I notice you have a house in this neighborhood. I'm a real estate agent. I'd like to list it for you." For me, I can come at it at a different angle because of the volume of foreclosures that I've actually done and been part of. So the other thing too is law firms right now. If you don't have a strong relationship with a mortgage specialist at a specific lending institution, it might be a good idea to start relationships with the law firms, because a lot of the times the lawyers can influence where the listing goes. Oh, I have an agent at Keller Williams that I think he would be a good match for this particular property, right? This is his turf. This is where he does a lot of business or whatever. And then you have the opportunity to start listing. And I would say, to my earlier comment about estates, same thing. Contact law firms and talk to them about handling some of their estates, because oftentimes when people die, they contact their lawyer to say, what do I have to do at this point? And if there's a disposition of the assets, which means the real estate, they're going to need an advice. So I sold a place in Mount Uniac, and it was because the lawyer was in charge of the estate, and that lawyer that I send a lot of business to referred that business back to me, and we listed it and sold it.
So another question then to add on that. So this house on my street that I think is going to foreclosure, am I allowed to go on to Property Online to see who that mortgage is with and then cold call that mortgage company? Am I allowed to use Property Online for that purpose?
I can't answer the privacy issues related to that, and what, it's like calling an expired listing on MLS. I can't tell you that that's something you should do, but I would personally. Yeah.
I hear you.
Based on personal experience, I would.
That's right.
Because that's the only way. And then you might call the bank up there and like, no, they're just gone on vacation.
Right. Yeah. I was looking in their windows. It doesn't look like they took much. Meanwhile, they're basking in Mexico.
I recently did that. I have one in my neighborhood, but I know that's exactly what I did. I went on Property Online, and I know I have a good relationship with all the lenders around here. And I saw which lender it was, and I gave a call to one of the mortgage brokers I deal with there, and had a chat with him about it. So
Yeah.
Are we supposed to do that? I don't know. Probably not, but
Yeah. Sometimes you speed and you get caught. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I look at it and say that is a resource. It's one of the first go-to websites for me in dealing with real estate. I go to Property Online and find out as much as I can about the property. So Phil, what you'll want to do is, if you go into that property, you can see who holds the title, right? The property owner. And I'll tell you for one reason why that could be an advantage and an important thing. Two, you also know who the lender is for the mortgage. So let's say it is Bank of Montreal. Call somebody you know at the Bank of Montreal and just say, hey, listen, there's a property that's going under foreclosure on my street. I'm quite aware of it. Can you find out some more about it? And they'll likely say, yeah, here's an update. So there's a process at this point. If they've just abandoned their house, then that means they're so far behind on the mortgage that there's no hope to catch up. So they just know it's inevitable. So they're going to find a place to go and just toss the keys to the bank and leave. So don't be surprised within the next couple of weeks, there's going to be white paper tags, letter-sized tags in the windows. And one is in French and one is in English, and it's saying, "Ave," which means we've secured this property. Okay, so they'll go in, they'll change the locks, they'll winterize the property, they'll make sure that the utility is changed over from the former occupant to their management company, and they'll start the legal proceedings from there. And sometimes you'll see a property, I've seen a property almost 3 years now, sitting empty with the tags in the window. So It can take a long time to get through the process. And most of the reason why is because there are some title issues that they have to track down and they have to resolve, right? Interested parties. The other thing too is you have to serve people paperwork. And if you can't find them, you can't serve them. Right? So it may take a while. But going back to a more simplistic approach for to find out about the opportunities here is find out who the bank is and reach out to one of the mortgage specialists to ask, okay, I know that you hold a interest on title on this property. Can you tell me if it's gone to foreclosure at this point? If it hasn't gone to foreclosure, is it scheduled to go to sheriff's sale rather? All right, have you started proceedings? It's been 2 months. I've noticed that people have abandoned this property. Can you get me an update on what's going on? They or may not be able to help you, but at least they could point you in the next right direction. All right, to say, okay, I'll have to put you in touch with my branch manager, or here's the number for the collections department, and that's likely in Montreal or Toronto. Sometimes it's in Calgary, but most of the time it's Central Canada. So they will have the file. They will be quite aware of the property owner's circumstances there, and they won't give you specific details on it, but they can give you some sort of information that yes, it's up and coming. We have started legal proceedings on that property, and at that point, you can have your conversation about the possibility of listing it. If it's not, a lot of times the banks no longer deal with those directly. They outsource them to the law firms, and the law firms manage the foreclosure. Right? They get as much money as they can, and then once they sell the property, they send the funds to the bank, and they close out the sale. When it comes to knowing about foreclosures, unfortunately, they changed the process. At one time, the sheriff's department used to publish all foreclosures, and they used a public website. They often used the Halifax Herald, and in every case, you could go down to the law courts where they auction off these properties and look at their billboard down there. There's a notice of foreclosure for every property that's being auctioned off, pinned to their billboard down there. So there was an agent that I used to run into down at the law courts once in a while. He'd go down there every day, duck in, look at the board, and duck out, right? Just to know what new ones that were coming up on the market, because he himself, Philip Sterling, I don't know if you guys ever recognize the name or if he's even in the business. Maureen, he's from your area, I think, over in Dartmouth, but he used to buy and sell about 8 foreclosures a year himself. Wow. as a licensed agent. So again, unfortunately, they opened it up so that the sheriff is not responsible for doing the public, because you have to give public notice when properties are foreclosed on, right? They have to send it out for public notice so that anybody who has interest in the property can register their interest or show up at the sheriff's sale, right? So there's an advertising period that they're required to have, but the sheriff no longer is responsible for that. The legal firm is responsible, who is managing the foreclosure process. So it's up to them where they want to advertise. They want to advertise on the billboard, they'll advertise on the billboard. They want to put it on social media, they can do it there. Most of them are in the Halifax Herald even still. And you also see that All Nova Scotia oftentimes posts foreclosures on their website as well, in their publication every day. I looked there this morning, there's no foreclosures on the docket, but there have been over the last week and a half. So that's basically what I can say when it comes to finding out about it, getting the listings. The only other thing that I could suggest, if you go to property online and you put sellers' names, I do that often. Sometimes you'll come across a bank that has not yet listed the property. Most of the time, if you go to property online and you put Royal Bank of Canada in the property owner or company name, it will bring up every property that they have in possession in the province. But then if you cross-reference that with the MLS system, you'll notice a lot of them are already listed with agents and probably under agreement. So.
Tad?
Yep.
Is it usually in the Saturday Herald that they would post foreclosures?
It's random. You can find it in a Tuesday in the obituaries. It's random. They don't have a specific page in the paper that they put them in. They just have to appear in the paper. So, yeah.
And where is this board located that you're speaking of?
It's so if you go down to the law courts on Lower Water Street,
Okay.
it's next to historic properties. That's the courthouse. I don't know if they're open. You know, things are different right now, but if they are open, they're on the first floor, and you'll see the sheriff's department there.
But they don't do that anymore, do they?
They still do, yeah. Yep, you'll get the law firms posting their foreclosure notices still there.
I guess in terms of buying one though, they're not posted for sale down there anymore, right? They're just noticing. They're just the notice that they are foreclosed on.
So what the notice, the public notice is for, is to let people know that they're in the process of foreclosure and they are going to auction off that property at a specific date. And they even tell you how much money is owed. So if you've got a $250,000 property, they'll say we are owed $188,000 plus interest and costs. And that's what they're seeking at the sheriff's sale. And the highest bidder at the sheriff's sale gets the property. Doesn't have to be the bank. It can be you, it could be me, or any other member of the public.
But you have to have the money right there at the sheriff's sale, right?
You have to have 10%.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to put down 10% and it's non-refundable, and you have a certain period of time to arrange financing. I think it's 15 days.
But you would only have to put it down if your bid was accepted.
Correct.
And no, I lost it. It'll come back to me.
So there is no due diligence period, guys. So you go to the sheriff's sale, you get what you get. If the place has an oil spill, you've just inherited an oil spill. If the place is full of rodents, if it's got mold, mildew, asbestos, any other environmental issue, welcome home. It's your property.
Is there an opportunity to view it before it comes up for auction?
Not unless you peek through the windows.
All right.
Yeah, because that's most of the time. If you look, and it's funny, you'll see fingerprints all over the windows at managed properties. People are going there looking through the windows. You'll see fingerprints all over them. Yeah, nose prints. Anyway, so that's the risk that you have. So what advantage do you have, Phil? So you know that this property is vacant. If you know the former owners, you can still buy that property because there's a redemption period for those owners. So if you go to those owners and say, hey, listen, I know you're headed for foreclosure. To avoid all of that, for you to suffer a further deficiency on your mortgage, I'd be willing to take this property off your hands now and avoid the foreclosure process. If you make them an offer and they're willing to accept it and the bank's willing to accept it and let the sale go through because they're going to get their money back before foreclosure, the banks love that because they get their money back without any further loss, right? Because if they initiate the foreclosure process, I know that it's roughly $20,000 right out of the gate in cost. So if they're pursuing, say, $188,000 and this house is pretty run down and they're only going to get 180 on the market, well, they still have lawyers' fees, management fees, real estate fees, and any other negotiated value. So let's say they get an offer accepted. If they're owed 188 and they can only get 180, and then they find out the septic system's no good, because when a mortgager in possession like RBC puts the house on the market for sale, you still have a due diligence period and they will allow you to do your inspections as a consumer. At a sheriff's sale, you don't have that opportunity. But if it's listed for sale, you can make your offer subject to inspections. So let's say you find out the septic system's got to be replaced. Well, all of a sudden there's a $20,000 cost. You're going to go back and reduce that price from 180 to 160 to replace the septic. So if the bank can sell this property well ahead of the sheriff's sale and foreclosure process, they would absolutely love to, because if they sell it for 180, they've paid the lawyer $6,000 to $7,000 to be able to go through the foreclosure process, because there's a lot of background work legally to be able to send it to foreclosure and sheriff's sale and then manage the sale thereafter. You also have a management company like now. If it snowed all winter long, that management company has to clear the driveway. If there's any damage to that property, it comes off dollar for dollar. It devalues dollar for dollar. So if the furnace breaks down, okay, it's a $6,000 appliance that needs to be replaced. It's coming right off the price. They have to heat it all winter long with power costs. So the management fees in themselves are $6,000 to $8,000. So all of a sudden now we're up to 12. What is a real estate agent going to charge? On a $200,000 home, we're talking about 12,000 bucks, right? HST included. So all of a sudden we're at $20,000 to $22,000. Okay, so the banks know that. So if you know the neighbor down the way and say, listen, I'm going to write you an offer, right? What is your payout on this? They may tell you that. Say, okay, I'd be willing to give you that just to clear this and not send you to a foreclosure. Okay, one, it becomes public knowledge and maybe they want to protect their privacy. I'd rather avoid foreclosure so not everybody knows I've lost my house. Maybe they just understand that I've sold my house. So I want to avoid the maybe public embarrassment. I'd be happy to sign that agreement of purchase and sale. So long as the bank's willing to sign off on it, I'm willing to sign off on it. So you get them to sign the agreement of purchase and sale, and then you send it to the finance company that has interest on title for approval. If they say, yes, we'll release the mortgage and convey the title over, great. You've avoided the sheriff's sale. You've avoided a lot of costs for them, and they're more apt to accept your offer than send to foreclosure.
So what would be the clause that you would write in there for that?
So I would say that this agreement is subject to the approval of the mortgager in possession, or mortgager, sorry, not in possession, the mortgager that holds interest on title. Okay, so if the mortgager that has interest on title has Toronto Dominion Bank, then that would be the bank that the contract would go to for their approval. They'll look at it and say, okay, this is good for me. We're out 188,000. You're offering 199. You can actually build your commissions into that if you want to get paid, right? Because that's an advantage that we all have. You can put a 5% commission into your deal and get that back and use it as part of your down payment, right? So long as the bank looks at your number and says, okay, this clears up.
Can you explain that back up a bit?
Yep.
About putting your commission in?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh. So yeah, any property that you buy, if you want to negotiate your commission into that property, you can. So
say I got it for $50,000 at an auction. Like that's what I bid and they granted it. I go back to the mortgage company and say I'm getting it for $155,000.
no. So that's two different things, Joanne. What we're talking about is if like Phil's got a house 2 doors down or whatever, somewhere on his street, there's a house that's been abandoned. If he can track down the seller and say, listen, I want to buy your house personally, right? I want to use it as an investment. I want to rent it. I'm going to fix it and flip it. What is your payout for this? What's it going to take to discharge this mortgage? And they say it's going to be $188,000 to discharge this. Phil says, okay. I'm going to offer you $198,000. I want you to sign a fee agreement with me to say that I'm buying your house. You're a customer. I'm an agent. I'm buying it for my own personal use, and you are willing to pay me a commission of 5%. You are permitted to do that. Then you can use that 5% as part of your down payment. So when it closes and you give $198,000 to that, or sorry, the value of the closing is $198,000. 5% of that you can use towards your mortgaging on that property. That is part of your.
I like it. Okay.
So,
I like that. All right.
so you'd need to be careful though, Chad, that you're going in above what they need to discharge or else you're not getting paid.
Well, that's the other thing.
Correct?
Yeah. So that's the thing. So we have a situation where one of our teammates is negotiating with a seller in Truro. And he's going to be listing the property. And one of the things that we had to explore was the amount of the payout, because if somebody who can't pay out the mortgage cannot pay commissions either, right? So you just have to make sure. So, if you're going to pay $198,000 and take 5% as a commission, so that 5% comes off the sale price, you're still be able to discharge the mortgage at 188. So all of the existing mortgage with the arrears and the fees come to 188,000. So long as you meet that, the bank will sign off on it. They'd be very happy to sell. So if you ever heard the term short sale for down in the States, short sale, that means buying the property before it goes to sheriff sale. Selling it quickly, maybe the bank takes a loss, they'll sign off on it, allow the title to go from the existing homeowner over to the new purchaser. So that's a short sale. The process is accelerated, and the bank will take a whole lot less of a loss than if they go through the whole motions of putting it on the market and trying to recover theirs, like their investment in that property. So if you have a client that is interested in a property that is going to be foreclosed on, and you want to get paid, you have to have a conversation with that client to say, there's a chance that there's no equity in this property. I will ask for my commission, but there's a chance that you as the buyer will have to pay my commission if you are going to be represented by me through that process, because there's likely not enough equity in that property to be able to pay out the mortgage and your commission. Okay.
Mhm. Okay.
Chad, I've gone and tracked down this house that's vacant on our street. I found the homeowner here while you've been chatting.
Yep.
Obviously, there's no contact information on property online. I'm Googling her name right now, and I may or may not have found her. Like, is that what it is? Is just a witch hunt here, or just?
Yep.
Like, I might contact this person, and it's not her, and she might.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the thing, though, Phil. You got to use your resources. Your resources are whatever they are. All right. Go knock on the neighbor's door and say, hey, listen, I noticed the guy kind of bailed on his house next door. Can you tell me a little bit about it? And I'm sure they're going to tell you where this guy went. Right. Whatever you can do to discover somebody. Right. Oh, I don't know the seller, but I know their first cousin. His name is this. Reach out to him, or do the Facebook creeping, or whatever you need to do to find these people before it goes to foreclosure.
Yeah, I know it's vacant. I know they're going to need to sell it. There's something's going on here. I watched them pull up in a U-Haul and just took off in the middle of the night. Like, I know something's, and I want it.
Right. So, yeah, so that's the best I can offer you. Just go on property online. You can also find out how much the mortgage is. You know, say they took the mortgage out in 2019 and they're gone now. All right, so you know they pretty much have not paid a lot down on principal, so you can kind of get a gauge as to what they owe on the property and what it's going to take to discharge the mortgage. Okay.
Can I ask another one?
Yep.
How many properties, like, as long as we're claiming the commission off of it, if we bought them and sold them, I suppose that would be profit. We'd have to declare all the profit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
As capital gains.
Right.
Okay.
So, guys, we'll move on from that, and we'll just look at a lot of the questions that people ask are you allowed to fully inspect foreclosures, or what does as is, where is mean? Right? So does that mean once you get an accepted offer that you have to take the property and no matter what condition it's in? No. As is, where is just means that they are not going to do anything to improve the property, and you realize as is, where is, it's you're 100% responsible for investigating absolutely everything there is to know about that property. Everything, including the reason why they don't offer a warranty deed, because they're not a knowledgeable title owner, right? They just acquired this property by default. They lent the money. They know nothing about this title. They know nothing about the property. So whatever you discover is up to you. Absolutely everything. So that's why you have to agree to their bank schedule, Schedule A, which is usually a 2 to 3 page document that says specifically, we don't warrant anything about anything about anything. So it's so redundant all the way through. So if you say, oh, well, all appliances to remain, the bank will scratch that out. Nope, as is. If they're there on closing, great. If they're not, then they're gone, right? They don't warrant, because if Uncle Bob lent his nephew his washer, dryer, and fridge and stove because he couldn't afford to buy new ones, they don't warrant that those appliances in that house belong to the former owners. So if you move in and Uncle Bob comes knocking and says, I want my appliances back, well, that was up to you to discover. Same thing about hot water heaters, leased furnaces. They don't warrant that. If there's a leased furnace, then the oil company is going to take the loss, but they're not saying whether or not the furnace was owned or leased. That's up to you to find out, right? So it's all of that information. Now, going back, one of the things that I would recommend to anybody and everybody that I deal with as a buyer, I say, when you buy any sort of real estate, buy title insurance. Title insurance covers you on foreclosure purchases. Believe that. So if there's something that crops up that you were not able to investigate because you purchased a property at a sheriff's sale, you can buy title insurance to protect yourself. Beyond that, you can buy title insurance when you buy a foreclosure property, which I highly, highly recommend. We have situations in the past where garages are encroaching on neighbors. Neighbors are encroaching on our subject properties. I dealt with an RBC property probably in 1998 or 1999. And 2 days before the closing, the buyer's lawyer did a title search and said, oh dear, I just discovered that the neighbor's septic system is in your backyard of the house that you're buying. And they had a right of way to service it. My guy called frantic and said, everything I own is in a moving truck. We just had our baby about a month and a half ago. We gave notice, our apartment is rented. We are supposed to be moving into this house. But unfortunately, we bought this house so I could build a nice big garage in the backyard. And the lawyer just told me, I'm not able to do that because the neighbor's septic system's there instead. So those are the types of things. Now that was an error on the part of the lawyer. If you ask me, they should have done a search when the agreement of purchase and sale was accepted during the due diligence period and not waited 2 days before closing. But we found out that there was an area that they could still build the garage and it was all good. But had he moved in and then tried to sell this property after the fact, or there was a dispute between he and the neighbors, that's where title insurance gets very important, because there's only so much you can find out on your own as an as-is whereas situation. So that's why bank foreclosures are less valuable, even if they are in the same condition as the house next door that was sold by the neighbor, because the neighbor can offer warranty and information to reduce the risk to the buyer. As-is whereas does not. So the buyer is assuming a lot more risk because they are the ones doing the discovery from beginning to end about every material fact there ever is in existence, from title to boundaries to neighborhoods to physical conditions. Okay, so that's the responsibility of the purchaser of a foreclosure. So I do have, we're not going to have time for me to share this, but I do have, and you guys can do this as well. Go onto MLS and you can put any house that is sold since the 1st of January 2019 till today's date, and go down to the seller's name and put in the name of a bank. And it will show you every property that has been sold by that bank since January 1st of 2020 or 2019. So, and you can read some of the bank schedules and see what they say. It's all as is, where is, no warranty. Like, it's just so very redundant. Now, I discovered a property out in Tantallon where they would not allow a septic system evaluation. It's like, nope. For my buyers, that's totally off the table. Unless that buyer is willing to make an offer in consideration that if they move into that property, they've got the extra $20,000 to $24,000 to replace a septic. So you have to compensate for that risk if you're going in blind. Just assume the septic system has to be replaced. I don't assume that everything is fine, not with a foreclosure, right? If you're getting warranty from a seller, then that's a different story. You can assume, all right, we might be able to get away with not doing the septic evaluation because the seller said, it's only been put in 15 years ago and I've never had a problem with it. It's still a risk, but it's less of a risk than if you go in with a foreclosure, because the thing about foreclosures and the nature of those property is if they hadn't had the money to keep up with their mortgage, they are not maintaining that property, right? So you are buying distressed properties, and it's weird. A lot of those properties have the same smell going in. That's one of the characteristics I've noticed about going into a secured foreclosed property. They have this weird smell about them, that stagnant, trapped, musty air. That it's just a weird smell. But at the end of the day, do you think they brought in somebody to maintain the furnace? Do you think if there was a leak around the window that they called somebody to come in and fix it? Right? The air exchanger probably hasn't been cleaned and serviced forever. The appliances, if there's well pumps, septic systems, do you think they had the septic system pumped out regularly? Probably not. So there's a lot of characteristics about foreclosures you have to be very aware of, because those are the types of things you really have to factor into when you protect your buyers. One, talking to them about the value and saying, these are characteristic of these foreclosures. Do you think that they are totally up on their maintenance? No, that's going to cause problems down the road. Your inspector should be able to confirm a lot of those things. Bring in a burner technician to do an evaluation on any furnace systems, or a heat pump technician to evaluate the heat pump, because if it's a whole home heat pump system, that's a $12,000 replacement if it's not working properly and has to be replaced. Mini splits are going to be $4,600. Right? That's a lot of extra money. So bring in the specialist to be able to evaluate those systems. Most banks will allow you to do a full performance evaluation. The problem is, if you've got a place that's got a well and septic, you scratch out anything that the seller warrants, and you do not ask the seller to do anything. Because if you look at our water and septic schedule, it says that the seller agrees to mark the location of the well and septic. Bank's not doing that. You're on your own. If the wellhead is buried below grade, up to you to bring somebody in to find it, dig it up, and do a flow test if you want to. Even to get the well running so that you can get a water sample. That's going to be up to you in a lot of cases. Now, the bank that I worked with was Household Finance, and they got bought out by HSBC Finance in the early 2000s. So I worked with the HSBC, and I think the last HSBC foreclosure, I did one finance deal out by you guys, Carol and Cassie. I did one out on, I can't remember, it was out by Grono Road in Elmsdale, Enfield area. And that was with HSBC Finance, and then I did one with HSBC Bank in Fall River on Sheffield Drive. I was able to get them to dig up the septic tank and do septic repairs. That's the relationship that I have with my bank, or with HSBC Finance. They dug up the pipe between the house and the tank. They leveled it off because the buyer said there's a problem with the pipe, it's collapsed. So I got Derek Hale from the septic doctor, ended up going out there, replacing that lateral, cost them only $300. And then they did the same thing over on Sheffield Court. There were risers and there was something else. To smooth it all over, the bank went out and paid for Derek to do both systems that year. That was in 2018, I believe. And they did both of them.
Yeah.
Very, very, very uncommon.
I find some banks are like that. Depends on the relationship you have with that person, the banker as well. Because I've had them put UV lights on, and other things like that. If there's, and so yeah, it does definitely depend on the bank for sure.
It does, in your relationship, and because I worked with HSBC for almost 16 years, doing their foreclosure work exclusively, and they know how I operate, and they know when I make a suggestion, it means it's in their best interest. It protects their money. They'll take less of a loss if they listen to me, right? Septic system's a big thing, and no buyer, when a problem comes along, is going to take it at face value that it's only $2,000. They're going to say it's $3,500, right? So protect your interest in your investment. So for the people who are dealing with foreclosures, why does a bank accept one price as opposed to another? So if you look at the scenario of the former property owner, or the property owner that they've repossessed the home from, if you go in there and you try and negotiate a price with the bank in one case has limited control on the value that they can accept, where in other cases, carte blanche, whatever they want to sell it for, they can. And the reason why that is that they cannot repossess your home worth $500,000 and sell it for $250,000. They have a legal obligation to protect your equity. They cannot just take your $250,000 and throw it down the drain because you got sick, lost your job, couldn't pay your bills for 4 months. That doesn't allow them the right to take the $250,000 and throw it down the drain just because they're only owed $250,000 on your $500,000 home. So thankfully, there is law that protects you as a homeowner. They take your money or take your house, they can't take all your money. They have a due diligence process where that's why every 30 days, if the house doesn't sell, you have to fill out a great big report as a listing agent to say what you've done to market the property, how many showings, how many offers, and what is your recommendation at this point. And if you ever recommend a price reduction, it has to be a reasonable recommendation. It can't say drop by 50,000 if that's not justifiable. But there is a certain percentage they're allowed to drop that price by and then pursue market value for another 30 days. And they have to go to court because if the seller says, you dumped my property for less than market value, I was owed $100,000 of that equity and you threw it away on me. So they have established, we pursued market value. Every 30 days, our real estate agent said what they did for me to be able to sell that property. We got no offers, no showings. We dropped the price by 5%. And we marketed it for another 30 days. Still the same thing. So we dropped the price again until we hit market value. And Your Honor, we have established that this is the true market value of this property. We paid out ourselves and they got what was left over, which was, $5,000, right? So that's how that goes. So the bank can't just accept a low ball offer right out of the gates. Everybody's like, oh, bank foreclosure, it's go time, I'm gonna get a deal. Not necessarily. The time you get a deal is if there is no equity in the property and the homeowner signed for bankruptcy. If they're going bankrupt, then they have no equity in the property. The trustee will sell. So if you work with Salesian and Associates out of Sackville, they're trustees in bankruptcy, sign your house over to Salesian. Salesian looks at the equation and says, well, we can dump the real estate because there's no equity in it. The real estate appraisers are coming back and saying the house is worth $150,000 and you owe $180,000 on it. So there's $30,000 deficiency here. Time to go bankrupt. So if there's no equity in that house, the trustee will sell the deed to the bank so the bank can sell it on the open market. They'll sell the deed for $1,000 to the bank. So the bank gets the deed, and at that point, they can dump the property at whatever price they want. There's no way really to find that out unless you go, like Phil's tactic, go on Property Online, research it, and if you see that there was a conveyance through a trustee in bankruptcy, so if we all hopped on Property Online now and we picked a property that we know has been a bank sale, some of them will be sheriff sales. You'll see the judgment for foreclosure where they have to actually apply to the courts to foreclose on that property. They have to state their case, present their evidence, and then the judge will allow, I think it's 15 days for the homeowner to respond to say, I'm appealing this because, and they give their evidence. But if they don't show up at court, then the judgment is granted and then they're allowed to go to foreclosure. So you'll see the judgment for foreclosure registered to some of the titles of the property on these on some of these sheriff sales and bank sales. The other thing you'll be able to see is whether or not the title has been conveyed through trustee deed from a trustee in bankruptcy. Okay, if that's happened, then if the bank wants to dump that property, go ahead and lowball it because it's entirely up to the bank whether they want to dump that property for a lot less than market value. And sometimes timing is everything, guys, because one of the inner workings that I saw how corrupt the banking system is, they are absolutely bonus driven. So if they have less deficiency on their book of business, they will dump tens of thousands of dollars in value for houses to get that book of business off for when they are, as a collection agent, getting bonused. If I have to dump a property, and I had a situation where a property that was coming to bonus time, they dropped 50 grand on the price, just like that. If we could close it by the end of the month. If we weren't closing it by the end of the month, it was a no deal because it didn't matter to their bonus structure anymore because they rolled over into the next pay period. But if they could get that recovery, it was a $589,000 house and we sold it for $530,000. And they dropped the 50 grand just like that, plus like a $10,000 landscape allowance to be able to get that $530,000 deficiency off their books. Because then it made a big difference to their numbers and they were bonused higher. Probably got another $5,000 to $8,000 bonus by the end of the month because they got that deficiency off their books. So, but in that situation, this property, the homeowner went bankrupt. So they could do what they wanted. And they dropped that 50 grand and we closed it by the end of the month. So if you guys know of anybody that has an issue that they're confiding in you and saying, hey, I'm way behind, I don't know what to do, the bank is looking at foreclosing, convince them if there's no hope, there's no rescue, there's no redemption, you might as well put it on the market and sell it. If they're so far in debt with consumer debt, they've got lines of credits and they've got car loans and they've got credit cards all maxed out and they're behind 4 or 5 months and there's no equity in the house, there's really no incentive for them to sell their house at a loss and sell it before foreclosure. Go find another place and let the bank take it back. Reason being, because right now, what will happen is if there's a deficiency, the bank will sell their properties, but whatever they don't recover, they will still pursue that homeowner for. So if the house sells for 188, but they owe 200, that $12,000, they'll still discharge the loan, the mortgage from the title to allow the sale to go through. But then instead of having the collateral of the house, because it's gone and they recovered as much as they can, 188,000 out of 200,000, they roll that $12,000 into the bad debt department and they have collection agents calling these people who are the former homeowners to try and get the $12,000 deficiency that's still owed. So they go from secured to unsecured and they still get chased. So if there's a huge amount of debt, those people are better off just going bankrupt because there's no incentive for them to sign a listing with you unless they're willing to do you a favor. Because you're going to get a commission or a sale out of it or an investment property. That's what you're going to get. The incentive is for you. There's no incentive for a homeowner who's that far in debt to sell their property. You might as well chuck the keys to the bank and call your trustee in bankruptcy.
So if you know that that situation is happening, then you call the bank or the trustee.
So if they've signed with a trustee, then you call the trustee because the trustee holds the power at that point. It's they
before it goes to the bank.
Correct.
Before it goes back to the bank, before they sell the title back. Okay.
But there's a good chance. I mean, the trustee will say, yeah, you can do this if you want to pay out the bank. The bank's owed 200,000. If you want to pay the bank 200,000 to discharge the mortgage and pay us $1,000 for the title, we'll sell you the title, so long as you pay out the bank. Because if they define that there's no equity in this property, the trustee's got nothing to work with because they take the equity of your entire estate and they try and settle with the creditors. But if there's no equity anywhere, then there's no use of having that title to the property because there's nothing in it for them to work with. So they'll just sign the title away and it's somebody else's problem at that point.
So then you go to the bank.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, so does anybody else have questions or does anybody have questions further to what we just kind of covered on foreclosures?
No, but if you heard about that Kitech thing, I was speaking to Matthew Dix at Allstate and they're going to cover the people they currently cover as a grandfather, but Allstate is no longer covering Kitech insurance.
That's the
But they are
15th.
fighting it. So
I
they're
had
hoping
my
for
broker
that.
yesterday who told me the same thing.
Very
There
cool.
was a post on our KW site asking about it, so I reached out to Matt.
So again, I guess maybe I could just reiterate some things. In dealing with the banks, bear in mind, these guys are multi-billion-dollar companies. There's no pushing them around. If you give them open for acceptance time until 5 o'clock next month, they don't care. My offer expired. You owe me a reason. No, I don't. They're like, they don't care. I'm offering you a good, they will treat you whenever it's convenient for them. They'll respond when it's ever convenient for them. You cannot push them around ever, right? People ask me, doesn't the bank have a legal responsibility to change the Kitech or to do this or to do that? Nope, they don't. The bank doesn't have to do anything. They could sit there and burn the house down if they wanted to. That's their business. right? I mean, of course, if they own 100% of the equity in it, that is. So when people are making offers on it, they specifically ask me questions like, can I get the bank to do this or that? Nope, probably not. Does the bank have to? Nope, ever, not ever. They don't have to get the water running for you to take a water sample. They don't have to open up the septic tank for you to do inspections. They don't have to pump up the septic tank, nothing, right? This is a house. If you want to buy it, buy it. The rest is up to you. That's what you're going to get from a bank. How do you value properties that are foreclosed on? Same way you would value any other property. Comparative market analysis or cash flow value or replacement costs, right? One of the things that I know when I value properties for the bank is whatever costs it would take. So one house sells for $250,000 and you've got the exact same home next door, but it's going to take about $20,000 to bring the condition and standard up to the house next door that just sold that was in pristine condition. If that house sold for $250,000 next door, you don't just discount 20 grand and say, oh, that's what it would be worth, because it's not. I worked for about 3.5 years before I really got it. Buyers are not coming in to break even if they have to roll up their sleeves to do the work. If the cost is 20 grand, they're taking 25 or 30 off the price. They're not breaking even. In a market like this, when people are desperate for houses, yeah, maybe that would be the case. I don't care. I just need a house. It's going to cost me 20 grand to fix it up. Then I'll take 20 grand off, and I'll just do sweat equity. But at the end of the day, properties under foreclosure are not as valuable and worth as much as properties that have warranty, that are sold from homeowner to buyer. Okay, any other questions before we head out? We're a few minutes past time, but if you've got any questions, now's the time.
Oh, thank you, Chad. I have to run now, so thank you very much. It was great.
Thanks, Chad. It was excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chad.
Very interesting. Thanks, Chad.
All right,
Thank you, Chad. As always, it was amazing.
no problem, guys.
That's great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, sounds great. Have a great day, everybody.
You
Janice,
too.
can I ask you a couple
Bye.
questions before you go?
Yeah, we just need to stop recording here. Just a minute.
Okay.